They threw $100,000 at her feet and called her trash. But the Vampire King saw what they couldn't. She carried the rarest blood in 400 years. Within 1 week, she would go from an $8 an hour maid to the woman who held his eternal life in her hands. This is how Serafina Vale made them kneel. 1 week from now, she would stand before the Vampire Council in a gown the color of midnight diamonds glittering at her throat like captured stars. Draven Ashmore, the man who had offered her a fortune to commit murder, would be stripped of everything he owned. The assembled vampires' creatures who had walked the earth for centuries would watch in stunned silence as she was crowned queen consort of House Ashmore. But that was 1 week away. Right now, Serafina Vale was on her hands and knees scrubbing blood from marble floors at 3 in the morning, her back screaming and her bank account showing $47.16. The blood was hers. She had cut her cane on a broken wine glass 2 hours earlier while clearing the debris from some wealthy vampire's private party. The estate manager hadn't offered her a bandage. He had simply pointed at the stains spreading across the pristine white marble and said one word: clean. So she cleaned. The mansion was silent except for the wet sound of her scrub brush and the distant ticking of a grandfather clock that cost more than her mother's medical bills. Serafina's reflection stared back at her from the polished floor, a pale ghost of a girl with dark circles under her eyes and hair falling out of a messy bun. 24 years old, 3 jobs, still drowning. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't need to look to know what it was. Another automated reminder from the hospital billing department. Another countdown to the deadline. 3 days until her mother's surgery. $150,000 she didn't have. She sat back on her heels, pressing the heels of her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. Don't cry. Crying wastes time. Crying doesn't pay bills. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory from that morning's visit. Elowen Vale propped up on pillows in a hospital bed that beeped in word tubes snaking from her arms like transparent vines. Her skin had been paper-thin blue veins, visible beneath like rivers on a map. Sarah, baby, she had whispered, her voice as fragile as spun glass. Desperate choices leave permanent scars. Choose carefully. Serafina had held her mother's hand so small now, so cold, and lied through her teeth. Don't worry, Mom, I've got it handled. She didn't have it handled. She had $47.16 to her name. The grandfather clock struck 3:30. Serafina's shift at the estate ended at 4. Then she had 45 minutes to get across town to the 24-hour diner where she waitressed the breakfast shift. After that, her 3-hour break before her evening shift at the library. Sleep was a luxury she had abandoned 2 months ago. She dunked her brush in the bucket of pink-tinged water and returned to scrubbing. The blood was almost gone. Just a faint shadow remained like a ghost of violence on expensive stone. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. It wasn't a bill reminder. It was a text from her library supervisor, Janet, who had a bad habit of sending job postings to Sarah at odd hours. Night attendant position, Ashmore Estate, $5,000 a week, nights only. Saw the posting on the exclusive board. Might be worth a look. $5,000 a week. Serafina's breath caught in her throat. She read the message 3 times to make sure she wasn't hallucinating from exhaustion. $5,000 a week. That was more than she made in 2 months at all 3 jobs combined. 6 weeks of that, and she would have her mother's surgery covered. Maybe even enough left over to pay rent without choosing between electricity and food. Her fingers were shaking as she opened the link Janet had sent. The job posting was sparse, clinical, no flowery language about joining a family or exciting opportunities. Just facts. Night attendant required. Ashmore Estate. Midnight to 6 a.m. $5,000 weekly. Discretion essential. Medical background preferred. Apply in person. Medical background preferred. Serafina had completed 2 years of medical school before her father's death, and her mother's diagnosis had forced her to drop out. She knew her way around a sick room. She knew how to take vitals, administer medication, recognize the signs of distress. But $5,000 a week for a night attendant position. That wasn't normal. That was the kind of money that came with strings attached. The kind of money people paid when they needed someone desperate enough not to ask questions. Serafina looked down at her scraped, bleeding hands, at the bucket of bloody water, at the $47 in her bank account. Desperate choices leave permanent scars. She thought of her mother's failing heart. The way Elowen had smiled yesterday, even though Sarah knew she was in pain, because that's what mothers did. They smiled through agony so their children wouldn't worry. Serafina made her decision. She would be desperate. She would ask no questions, and she would take the money. The address on the posting led her to a part of the city she had only seen from the windows of buses. Old money. The kind of neighborhood where the trees were older than the country and the houses had names instead of numbers. Ashmore Estate sat at the end of a long, winding driveway lined with iron fencing that looked like it had been forged in hell. The gates were black and intricate, twisted into shapes that suggested wings and thorns and things with too many teeth. They were closed when Serafina arrived on foot, her bus pass exhausted and her feet aching in shoes held together with duct tape. She pressed the button on the intercom box mounted to the stone pillar. The speaker crackled with static that sounded almost like breathing. Name. The voice was female-clipped and cold as a winter grave. Serafina Vale. I'm here about the night attendant position. Silence. Long enough that Sarah thought the connection had cut. Then the gates began to open. They didn't swing. They didn't slide. They peeled apart like a wound opening metal grinding against stone with a sound that made her teeth ache. The driveway beyond was darker than it should have been. The afternoon sun hung low in the sky, but somehow its light didn't seem to penetrate the canopy of ancient oaks that formed a tunnel ahead. Serafina walked forward. The driveway was exactly 1 mile long. She knew because she counted her steps, a nervous habit from childhood. 2,640 steps on crumbling asphalt, flanked by trees that grew so close together, their branches interlocked overhead like skeletal fingers. No birds sang, no squirrels chattered. The only sound was her footsteps and her own breathing. When the mansion finally came into view, Serafina stopped walking. It wasn't a house. It was a monument to Gothic excess. Black stone and sharp angles, towers that clawed at the sky-stained glass windows that gleamed like angry eyes. It perched on the edge of a cliff, and beyond it she could see nothing but the gray expanse of the Pacific Ocean churning against rocks far below. The front door was already open. A woman stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim interior light. She was tall and rail-thin, dressed in black from her high-collared dress to her practical shoes. Her silver hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch the skin of her face, giving her a severe, ageless quality. "You are late," the woman said. Her voice was the same one from the intercom. "I expected you an hour ago." Serafina glanced at her phone. The posting had said, "Apply in person," but hadn't specified a time. "I apologize." The posting didn't. Excuses are unbecoming. The woman's eyes were the color of slate. They raked over Serafina from head to toe, cataloging every flaw. The duct-taped shoes, the thrift store jacket with the broken zipper, the desperate, exhausted look of someone who had been running on fumes for months. Desperation, the woman murmured almost to herself. Good. Desperation ensures loyalty. She stepped aside. Enter. Do not touch anything. The interior of Ashmore Estate smelled of beeswax, old paper, and something else. Something metallic and dark that reminded Serafina of the blood she had scrubbed from marble that morning. The foyer was massive and empty, furnished only with that grandfather clock and a chandelier that hung from the ceiling like a frozen waterfall of crystal. It was cold, not the crisp cold of autumn air, but the bone-deep cold of a place that had never known warmth. "I am Mrs. Ravenscroft," the woman said, walking briskly down a hallway lined with portraits. "I have managed this estate for 53 years. You will address me as ma'am. You will follow my instructions without question. And you will never, under any circumstances, discuss what you see here with anyone outside these walls. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Ravenscroft stopped before a portrait of a man with eyes like ice and a smile that didn't reach them. "Good. The position is simple. You will work from midnight to 6 in the morning. You will attend to the master's chambers. You will ensure the room remains pristine." Serafina jogged to keep up with the older woman's long strides. "The master, I was told this was a medical attendant position. Is he ill?" Mrs. Ravenscroft stopped so abruptly that Sarah nearly crashed into her. The woman turned, and for the first time Serafina saw something flicker behind those slate eyes. Something that might have been warning or pity. "Mr. Lucian Ashmore suffers from a rare condition," Mrs. Ravenscroft said slowly, as if choosing each word with care. "He has been in a death-like sleep for 40 years. The doctors have no explanation. Your job is not to treat him. Your job is to maintain his environment. Dust the furniture, change the linens if necessary, ensure the room is pristine." 40 years. Serafina's medical training kicked in despite herself. 40 years, that's impossible. The muscle atrophy alone would... "I did not ask for your medical opinion, Miss Vale." Mrs. Ravenscroft's voice could have frozen fire. "I asked if you understood your duties." "I understand, but..." There are 3 rules. The older woman leaned in close. Serafina could smell lavender and something underneath it, something that reminded her of funeral homes. Listen closely, girl. I will say this only once. These rules are not suggestions. They are the difference between a paycheck and a tragedy. The chandelier above them swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. Rule 1, you must never touch him. Not his hand, not on his arm, not even the edge of his sleeve. If you must adjust his blankets, use gloves. If you must change his linens, work around him. But do not make physical contact. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Rule 2, you must never open the curtains. The room must remain dark at all times, no sunlight, no moonlight. The darkness is not negotiable. I understand. Rule 3, Mrs. Ravenscroft's eyes bored into Serafina's like drills. You must never allow a single drop of blood to fall in that room. If you cut yourself, you leave immediately. You do not attempt to clean the wound there. You do not try to hide it. You leave. Do you understand the importance of this rule? Serafina's palm throbbed where she had cut it earlier. I understand, ma'am. Do you? Mrs. Ravenscroft tilted her head. Because the last girl who ignored my warnings didn't just lose her job, Miss Vale. She lost her mind. We found her 3 days later catatonic in the garden. She hasn't spoken a coherent sentence since. The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. I understand, Serafina whispered. Good. Mrs. Ravenscroft resumed walking. You will start tonight, midnight sharp. I will provide you with a uniform and the key to the master's chambers. You will find cleaning supplies in the attached washroom. Do your work, do not linger. And above all, do not forget the rules. They stopped before a massive set of double doors. The wood was so dark it was almost black, carved with intricate scenes of wolves running beneath a full moon, their eyes inlaid with something that glittered in the dim light. One more thing, Mrs. Ravenscroft set her hand on the doorknob. This position pays $5,000 a week because it requires absolute discretion. If you breathe one word of what you see here to your friends, your family, a priest, anyone, you will not receive a termination notice. You will simply disappear. The Ashmore family has resources beyond your comprehension. They can make problems vanish as if they never existed. She opened the door. Do we have an understanding, Miss Vale? Serafina looked past the woman into the room beyond. She couldn't see much, just darkness and the faint outline of heavy curtains. She thought of her mother's smile, her mother's cold hands, the beeping monitors and the surgery that would cost $150,000 she didn't have. We have an understanding, ma'am. Mrs. Ravenscroft smiled. It was not a kind expression. Excellent. I will see you at midnight. Serafina returned to the estate at 11:45 that night. The gates opened before she reached the intercom, as if the house had been watching her approach. Waiting. Mrs. Ravenscroft met her at the door with a black uniform dress that was 2 sizes too large and a brass key that was surprisingly heavy. The master's chambers are in the east wing 3rd floor, the old woman said. I will escort you tonight. Tomorrow you will find your own way. They climbed a grand staircase in silence. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch them pass, their eyes following Serafina's movement. She told herself it was a trick of the light. She didn't quite believe it. The east wing was colder than the rest of the house. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors, and Serafina could see her breath misting in the air. When they reached the double doors, Mrs. Ravenscroft handed her the key. Midnight to 6, she said. If you leave early, do not return. If you break the rules, do not return. And Miss Vale, yes, ma'am, do not expect him to wake. What remains is merely a shell we are contractually obligated to maintain. She walked away, her footsteps fading into the darkness. Serafina stood alone before the carved doors. The wolf eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. She could hear her own heartbeat loud and fast in her ears. $5,000 a week. Her mother's surgery. She inserted the key. The lock clicked with a sound like breaking bones. She pushed the doors open and stepped into the darkness. The room was vast. Serafina could feel the space around her, the way the air moved differently in a large chamber. Her eyes struggled to adjust. The only light came from the hallway behind her, and it barely penetrated the heavy velvet curtains that covered what must be floor-to-ceiling windows. The air here was different, still cold but heavy, thick with something she couldn't name. It pressed against her skin like invisible hands. In the center of the room, on a raised platform, sat a massive 4-poster bed. The posts were carved from the same dark wood as the doors, twisted into shapes that suggested vines and thorns. Crimson silk draped from the canopy, pooling on the floor like spilled wine. Serafina approached slowly. Her footsteps were silent on the plush carpet. Every instinct she had was screaming at her to run, to leave, to forget the money and flee this place. But she thought of her mother, the monitors, the failing heart. She stepped closer. A man lay on the bed. Serafina's breath caught in her throat. He didn't look like he had been sleeping for 40 years. He looked like a sculpture carved from the finest marble by an artist who had spent a lifetime studying perfection and still fallen short of capturing it. His skin was pale, not the sickly pallor of illness, but the translucent quality of alabaster held up to light. It stretched over high cheekbones and a jawline so sharp it could cut. His hair was black as a raven's wing, spilling across white pillows in stark contrast. He wore a loose white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a throat and chest that were perfectly still. He wasn't breathing. Serafina froze. Her medical training kicked in automatically. Not breathing meant cardiac arrest, meant death, meant she needed to check for a pulse start, CPR, call for help. But Mrs. Ravenscroft had said 40 years. You can't survive 40 years without breathing. She took another step closer, peering at his chest. No rise, no fall, no movement at all. His face was beautiful in a way that made her uncomfortable. Sharp features softened by long lashes that rested against his cheeks like dark crescents. Full lips that were slightly parted. He looked like he was 30, maybe 35 at most. Not a man who had been asleep since before Serafina was born. She realized she was staring. "Hello," she whispered to the silent room. "I'm Serafina. I'm going to be taking care of your room." No response. Of course not. Mrs. Ravenscroft had said he was essentially gone. Brain activity, minimal. A shell being maintained because of some contractual obligation. Serafina forced herself to move, to remember why she was here. The cleaning supplies were in the attached washroom, just as Mrs. Ravenscroft had said. She gathered them quickly, dustcloths, furniture, polish, fresh linens, and got to work. The room was meticulously clean already. Clearly someone had been maintaining it regularly. But she dusted anyway, running her cloth over the antique furniture, the silver mirrors that seemed to distort her reflection into something gaunt, and haunted the bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes in languages she didn't recognize. All the while she was acutely aware of the man on the bed. Several times she could have sworn she felt eyes on her, that prickling sensation between the shoulder blades that said someone was watching. But every time she turned to look, he was exactly as he had been. Motionless, still, not breathing, not alive, but not quite dead either. It was 3 in the morning when she finally allowed herself to approach the bed more closely. The linens didn't need changing, but she told herself she was being thorough, professional. The truth was she couldn't help herself. She needed to understand. Up close, he was even more impossibly beautiful and impossibly wrong. His skin had no pores, no fine lines, no imperfections. It was like looking at a wax figure, except wax figures didn't have that quality of arrested life. They didn't look like they might open their eyes at any moment and speak. Serafina's fingers hovered inches from his face. She wanted to touch him just to confirm he was real, just to feel if that skin was as cold and smooth as it looked. "Do not touch him." She pulled her hand back sharply as if burned. "I won't touch you," she whispered. "I promise." Well, the clock in the hallway chimed 4, 2 more hours. Then she could leave. Then she could collect her first week's pay. $5,000, one step closer to saving her mother. She could do this. It was just a strange, unsettling job in a gothic nightmare of a mansion, watching over a man who had been sleeping for 40 years and somehow didn't look a day over 30. Just a job. She returned to dusting. At 5:45, Serafina gathered her cleaning supplies and returned them to the washroom. The room looked exactly as it had when she entered. Perfect. Pristine. Untouched by time or decay. She took one last look at the man on the bed. Lucian Ashmore, the sleeping master of the estate. "Good night," she said softly. "I'll see you tomorrow." She left, locking the door behind her. Mrs. Ravenscroft was waiting in the hallway. "Well," the old woman asked. "The room is clean, ma'am. Any issues, any irregularities?" Serafina thought about the feeling of being watched, the way the mirror seemed wrong, the complete absence of breathing. "No, ma'am, no issues." Mrs. Ravenscroft studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You will find your first week's pay deposited in your account by noon. Same time tomorrow night, Miss Vale. Do not be late." Serafina walked home as the sun rose over Seattle. She was exhausted, unsettled, and deeply creeped out. She was also $5,000 richer. 3 nights passed. 3 nights of entering that cold, dark room. 3 nights of cleaning surfaces that were already clean, changing linens that showed no signs of use, polishing silver that never tarnished. 3 nights of watching the man who never moved. On the 4th night, everything changed. Serafina arrived at midnight, as usual. Mrs. Ravenscroft was not at the door to greet her. Instead, she found a note pinned to the entrance. "Let yourself in. I have business in the city. Remember the rules." The house was more silent than usual as Serafina climbed the stairs to the east wing. The portrait seemed to watch her with unusual intensity. The temperature was colder, her breath coming out in thick white clouds. She unlocked the master's chambers and stepped inside. The room felt different tonight, charged somehow, like the air before a thunderstorm. Lucian Ashmore lay as he always did, perfect and still on his crimson-draped bed. Serafina went about her work mechanically. Dust, polish, straighten. She had developed a routine, a pattern, that made the strangeness of it all more bearable. She was reaching for the silver candelabra on the bedside table when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps, not Mrs. Ravenscroft's brisk, efficient stride. The double doors opened. A man stepped into the room and Serafina knew immediately that he was trouble. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a suit that cost more than Serafina would make in a year. His hair was slicked back blonde where Lucian's was black. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Well," he said, his voice smooth as oil, "you must be the new help." Serafina straightened her hand, still on the candelabra. "I'm the night attendant, yes. Can I help you with something?" "I'm Draven," the man said, stepping further into the room uninvited. "Draven Ashmore, Lucian's cousin. I practically run this estate while he gestured at the bed. Well, sleeps his life away." There was something predatory in the way Draven moved, something that made Serafina's skin crawl. He circled her, slowly assessing. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Serafina Vale." "Serafina." He drew out her name, tasting it. "Pretty. Tell me, Serafina, how much is old Ravenscroft paying you to babysit a corpse?" "Mr. Ashmore isn't a corpse," Serafina said sharply, "and my salary is between Mrs. Ravenscroft and myself." Draven laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Defensive, I like that. Shows character. Tell me, do you know what's wrong with dear cousin Lucian?" "Mrs. Ravenscroft said it's a rare condition." "A rare condition." Draven's smile widened. "Is that what she called it? How diplomatic. Let me tell you the truth, Serafina. My cousin has been like this for decades because he's dying. His brain is shutting down. Any day now, his heart will finally stop, and then we can all move on with our lives." Serafina's hands clenched into fists. "That's a horrible thing to say about your family." "Is it?" Draven moved closer. Too close. Serafina could smell his cologne, expensive and cloying. "Or is it horrible to keep a dead man preserved like a museum piece, to waste resources on someone who will never wake up, to deny reality because of sentiment?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small glass vial. The liquid inside swirled on its own, silver and viscous. "This," Draven said, holding it up to the dim light, "is mercy." Serafina stared at the vial, at the way the liquid moved, alive and hungry. "What is it?" "Medicine." Draven's voice was soft now, coaxing. "It will help Lucian pass peacefully. No more suffering, no more wasting away in the dark. Just sleep. Permanent sleep." He stepped closer, close enough that Serafina had to tilt her head back to look at him. "You seem like a smart girl, Serafina. A girl who knows the value of money. I'm prepared to offer you $100,000 to pour this into Lucian's mouth tonight. Cash. Unmarked. Enough to solve whatever problems brought you to this godforsaken job in the first place. $100,000. Her mother's surgery, with money left over. Enough to pay rent for months. To sleep for once. To stop scrubbing floors and serving coffee and shelving books until her body gave out. All she had to do was pour liquid into the mouth of a man who was already as good as dead. A man who had been asleep for 40 years, who would never wake up, who was, as Draven said, merely being preserved out of sentiment. Serafina looked at the vial, then at Draven, then at the man on the bed. Lucian Ashmore, who had never done anything to her, who lay there defenseless and unaware. She thought of her mother's voice. Desperate choices leave permanent scars. "No," Serafina said. Draven blinked. "I'm sorry, no." She said it louder this time, clearer. "I won't do it. You won't do it." Draven's smile vanished. "Do you have any idea what you're turning down? $100,000, you stupid girl. For 30 seconds of work." "It's not medicine," Serafina said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. "It's poison. I can smell it. Nightshade extract and something else. Something chemical. And even if it was medicine, even if it would end his suffering, it's not my decision to make. He's not my family. And I became a medic to save lives, not end them. Draven stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket again and pulled out a thick envelope. The money is here. Cash. You can count it if you don't believe me. He placed both the vial and the envelope on the bedside table. I'll leave them here. Think about it. Think about what you could do with this money. Think about who needs you more, a dead man who will never know the difference, or whoever you're trying to save. He walked to the door, then paused. Midnight tomorrow, Serafina. If the vial is empty, the money is yours. If not, he shrugged. Well, I'll find someone else, someone less foolish. He left, closing the doors behind him with a soft click. Serafina stood alone in the room. The vial gleamed on the nightstand, silver liquid swirling. Next to it, the envelope practically glowed. $100,000. She could open it, count it, confirm it was real. She could pick up the vial, just hold it, just look at it. She did neither. Instead, she turned away and resumed her work, dusting the same surfaces she had already dusted, polishing the same silver, anything to avoid looking at the temptation on the nightstand. At 3 a.m, she finally allowed herself to approach the bed. Lucian lay as he always did, perfect, still, not breathing. I won't kill you, she whispered. I don't care how much money he offers. I won't do it. She reached for the vial and the envelope, intending to put them somewhere out of sight, somewhere she wouldn't have to look at them and think about what she was refusing. Her elbow caught the edge of the heavy silver candelabra. Everything happened in slow motion. The candelabra tipped, fell. The sharp decorative edge sliced through the air toward Lucian's outstretched arm. No, Serafina lunged, trying to catch it. Too late. The silver base crashed down onto Lucian's forearm. The carved edge, sharp as a knife, cut through the white silk of his shirt and into the pale skin beneath. Blood welled up. Not red, dark, thick. It moved slowly like syrup, the color of rubies in the dim light. Never let a drop of blood fall in that room. Panic seized Serafina's chest like a vice. She grabbed the first thing she could find, a clean cloth from her apron, and pressed it against the wound. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. The cloth grew warm beneath her hands. The blood was soaking through too much, too fast. She needed to apply more pressure. She needed the cloth slipped. Without thinking, without considering the rules, Serafina bit her own lip hard enough to draw blood. She had to moisten the cloth, had to clean the wound, had to stop the bleeding before it dripped onto the silk sheets. She pressed her bleeding lip against the cloth. A single drop of her blood, bright red and human, fell from her mouth. It landed directly in Lucian's open wound. The reaction was instantaneous. The temperature in the room plummeted. Serafina could see ice crystals forming on the windows, spreading like fractures across the glass. The curtains blew open as if caught in a gale, though the windows remained closed. Every candle in the room ignited at once, their flames burning blue and cold. Serafina scrambled backward, falling onto the carpet. On the bed, Lucian Ashmore's chest heaved. A sound tore from his throat. Ragged, desperate, the sound of a drowning man breaking the surface. The surface after being held under too long. His eyes opened. They weren't human. Molten gold glowing in the darkness with vertical slits for pupils. Predator eyes. Hunter eyes. He sat up in one fluid motion, too fast to be natural. His head turned towards Serafina with mechanical precision. Those gold eyes fixed on her, and she felt every hair on her body stand on end. Lucian Ashmore looked at his arm where her blood had mixed with his. Then his gaze snapped back to her face. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stones, like the earth splitting open. Who woke me? Serafina scrambled backward across the carpet, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. The man on the bed, the man who had been dead for all practical purposes just seconds ago, was staring at her with eyes that belonged to something from a nightmare. Lucian Ashmore rose from the bed with a grace that was fundamentally wrong. Humans didn't move like that. Nothing living moved like that. One moment he was sitting, the next he was standing beside the bed, towering over her, his movements too fluid, too fast, leaving after images in the air. His hands shot out and closed around her throat. Not squeezing, not yet, just holding her there against the wall, and his palm ice cold against her racing pulse. The pressure was light enough that she could breathe, but firm enough to communicate a simple truth. He could kill her before she drew her next breath. Answer me. His voice was raw, unused for decades. Each word scraped out like broken glass. Who woke me? I did. Serafina forced the words out past her terror. It was an accident. I knocked over the candelabra and it cut you, and I tried to stop the bleeding and he inhaled deeply, his face tilting toward the curve of her neck. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to something that was almost a purr. You smell sweet. His eyes widened, the gold brightening. And you reek of Draven. His free hand moved to her apron pocket. He pulled out the glass vial with its swirling silver contents, holding it up to the light of the blue flame still burning throughout the room. Nightshade extract. Lucian's lip curled back from his teeth. They were very white, very sharp. Mixed with silver nitrate and essence of wolfsbane, a poison specifically designed to kill my kind. Painful, slow, agonizing. He looked back at her, and Serafina saw his gaze move to the thick envelope on the nightstand. You were sent to kill me. It wasn't a question. No. The word burst from Serafina's chest. He gave it to me, yes. He gave me money, but I didn't do it. I couldn't. I put the money back. I was leaving. I swear I was about to walk out that door and never come back. Lucian stared at her for a long moment. Then he released her throat and stepped back. He swayed slightly, catching himself on the bedpost. For the first time, Serafina saw weakness in him, saw the way his hand gripped the carved wood like a lifeline. You had the means to kill a king, he said softly. You had the financial incentive. Draven pays well for murder. He looked at the crude bandage she had tried to apply to his arm, already soaked through with that dark, wrong blood. But you chose to bandage a corpse instead. Because it was wrong, Serafina said, her voice shaking. Murder for money is wrong. I don't care how much he offered. I'm not a killer. I'm just a maid. Something flickered across Lucian's face. It might have been surprise or respect. You are no maid, Serafina Vale. He read her name from the tag on her uniform. Do you know what you just became? Before she could answer, he turned toward the door. His movements were steadier, now more controlled. He buttoned his white shirt over the still bleeding wound on his arm, hiding the evidence of what had happened. Get up, he commanded. His voice had shifted from grinding stones to something smoother, colder, the voice of someone who was used to being obeyed. The game has changed, and whether you intended it or not, you are now the most important piece on the board. I don't understand. You will. He walked to the door, then paused. 46 people have worked in this room over the past 3 years. 46 night attendants, each hired by Mrs. Ravenscroft, each given access to me while I slept. He turned to look at her, and Serafina's blood ran cold. 46 people, Serafina. Do you know how many of them refused the poison? She shook her head mutely. None. Lucian's smile was knife-sharp. Not one. They all tried to kill me. Silver in my water, stakes hidden in the linens, holy water mixed with cleaning supplies. Every single method Draven could devise, executed by desperate people who needed money more than morality. What happened to them? Serafina whispered. I was not fully asleep. He touched his temple. Semi-conscious, aware enough to sense intent, aware enough to defend myself. They did not wake up the next morning. Their bodies were never found. The blue flames throughout the room flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. But you. Lucian crossed the space between them in the span of a heartbeat. He was in front of her again, close enough that she could see the intricate patterns of gold in his irises. You are the first who passed the test, the first who chose poverty over murder. Tell me why. Because I was trained to heal people, Serafina said, not to hurt them. My mother raised me better than that. Your mother. Lucian tilted his head. The one who needs the surgery. The $150,000 you don't have. Ravenscroft is very thorough in her background checks. He reached out and wiped a smudge of dust from her cheek with surprising gentleness. You could have saved her. All you had to do was pour poison into the mouth of a man who would never know the difference. A man who was, for all intents and purposes, already dead. Why didn't you? Because you're not dead, Serafina said. You're right here, and even if you were dying, even if it was mercy, like he said, it's not my choice to make. I don't get to decide who lives and who dies. Lucian stared at her for 3 heartbeats. Then he laughed. It was a startling sound, warm and genuine, and completely at odds with the predator standing before her. Oh, Serafina, you have no idea what you've done. Come. He strode to the door and threw it open. The hallway beyond was dark and empty. Where are we going? To the library. The board is meeting tonight. An emergency session to discuss my continued existence. Draven has been pushing for years to have me declared legally dead so he can seize control of the Ashmore estate and fortune. Tonight he planned to arrive with news of my peaceful passing, courtesy of your assistance. Lucian's smile was all teeth. I think we should surprise them, don't you? The library was a cavern of mahogany and leather lit by a massive fireplace that threw dancing shadows across walls lined with ancient books. Around a long table sat 12 people, 10 men and 2 women, dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses. They held crystal glasses of amber liquid, their faces flushed with alcohol in anticipation. At the head of the table sat Draven Ashmore. To Lucian Ashmore, Draven was saying, raising his glass. His voice dripped with mock sorrow. May his memory be a blessing. May his assets be liquidated efficiently. And may his long sleep finally mercifully end in premature cousin. Lucian's voice cut through the room like a blade through silk. The library fell silent. The kind of silence that happens when the dead walk. The kind of silence that happens when the impossible becomes real. Draven dropped his glass. It shattered on the hardwood floor, whiskey splashing his Italian leather shoes. His face drained of color, going from flushed to ash gray in seconds. Lucian, the word came out as a choke. But the doctors said, the doctors you paid. Lucian stepped into the room and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. The fire in the hearth roared higher, the flames taking on that same eerie blue tint from the bedroom. The same doctors who have been filing false reports for years. The same doctors who declared me brain dead when my cognitive function has been perfectly intact. He walked toward the head of the table with measured steps. Each footfall echoed like a judge's gavel. You're sitting in my seat, Draven. Draven scrambled up from the chair so fast he knocked it over. He retreated backward, his eyes wide with terror. We thought you were dying. Lucian reached the chair and sat down, crossing one leg over the other. He looked like a king on a throne despite the simple white shirt and lack of formal jacket. Fading away so you could take everything I built. He gestured to Seraphina, who stood frozen in the doorway. Every eye in the room turned to her. Gentlemen, ladies, allow me to introduce Seraphina Vale, the woman who broke the curse. A human Mavian, one of the board members of the heavy-set man with jowls like a bulldog sneered. You brought a human into the inner circle. After decades of maintaining protocol, you break tradition for a servant. Careful, Calloway. Lucian's voice dropped to something dangerous. She is not a servant. She is the reason I'm sitting here instead of rotting in that bed. She is my savior. Draven had recovered some of his composure, though his hands still shook. It's a miracle, truly. But Lucian, you must understand, the business has changed. The modern world requires modern leadership. Perhaps you should rest, recover. Let us handle the transition. There will be a transition. Lucian stood, placing his palms flat on the table. The wood groaned under his grip. Small cracks appeared in the lacquered surface. Effective immediately, the board is dissolved. I am auditing every account, every transaction, every penny that has moved through Ashmore Holdings. He looked directly at Draven. And if I find that a single dollar has been stolen, if I find that funds have been used to purchase rare poisons, to bribe doctors, to hire assassins disguised as night attendants, the punishment will not be legal, Draven. It will be biblical. Draven swallowed hard. His throat worked convulsively. Meeting adjourned, Lucian whispered. The board members fled. They scrambled over each other to reach the door, their expensive shoes slipping on the polished floor. Within seconds, the room was empty, save for Lucian, Seraphina, and Draven. Draven paused at the door. He looked back, his fear replaced by something colder, harder. Welcome back, cousin, he said softly. But remember, the world is dangerous. Accidents happen every day. Don't fall asleep again. He left. As soon as the door closed, Lucian collapsed into the chair. His supernatural posture broke. He gripped the armrest, his knuckles white, gasping for air he didn't technically need. Lucian, Seraphina rushed to his side. What's wrong? Waking up took everything I had left, he wheezed. That performance in there was pure bluffing. He looked up at her and she saw the veins beneath his eyes had gone dark, standing out against his pale skin like bruises. Draven knows I'm weak. He knows I can't maintain this charade. He won't run. He'll strike, and he'll come for you first. Why me? Because of the bond. Lucian reached out and pressed 2 fingers to her wrist, where her pulse hammered against his touch. When your blood entered my veins, it created something rare, a sanguine knot. It only forms when the donor gives blood willingly, or at least without malice. You tried to save me even though you thought I was beyond saving. That intent forged a connection. He closed his eyes. I can feel your heartbeat, Seraphina. I can sense your fear like it's my own. If you're hurt, I'll feel it. And if you die, He opened his eyes. I might follow. Serafina pulled her hand back. That's impossible. Blood doesn't work like that. Human blood doesn't. Lucian smiled without humor. But you didn't just give blood to a man, Serafina. You gave it to a vampire. And vampire blood bonds follow different rules. The word hung in the air between them. Vampire. Of course. The not breathing. The supernatural speed. The eyes. The way the house felt wrong, like it existed slightly outside normal reality. You're a vampire, Serafina said numbly. I am the vampire king of House Ashmore, Lucian corrected. Or I was before the curse, before I became so weak that my own cousin thought he could kill me with impunity. He stood steadier now and walked to the window. Dawn was beginning to break over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink. You need to leave, Lucian said. Go home. Forget this place. Forget me. Take the $5,000 Mrs. Ravenscroft paid you and disappear. Draven won't stop. He's too close to victory. He'll use you against me. And if I leave, Serafina asked, what happens to you? I'll manage. I've survived worse than a greedy cousin. You can barely stand. I'll recover. Will you? Serafina crossed her arms. Because from where I'm standing, you look like you're about to collapse. You said yourself waking took everything. How long can you last? Lucian turned from the window. That's not your concern. Isn't it? You said we're connected now, the sanguine knot. If you die, I might die too. That makes it very much my concern. They stared at each other across the library. Outside, the sun continued to rise. Why do you care? Lucian asked finally. You could walk away, let nature take its course. The bond might not even kill you. It's rare enough that the effects are unpredictable. Because you need help, Serafina said simply, and I was trained to help people who need it. That's what I do. Lucian laughed. It was a broken sound. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. Serafina walked toward him. What do you need to recover, I mean? What would help? Lucian looked at her for a long moment. Blood, fresh, willingly given. But I won't take yours. You've already given too much. What about blood bags hospitals have? Synthetic blood only sustains. It doesn't heal. I need... He trailed off, shaking his head. It doesn't matter. I'll manage. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 6. Serafina's shift was over. I need to go check on my mother, she said, but I'll come back tonight. We need to figure out what Draven is planning. Serafina, I'll come back, she said firmly. You can't stop me. Well, you could, but you won't, because you're not actually a monster, are you? You're just very good at pretending to be one. She left before he could argue. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and failing flowers. Elowen Vale lay propped against pillows, her skin paper-thin, her breathing shallow. An IV dripped steadily into her arm, each drop measured, each drop expensive. Baby, Elowen's eyes opened when Serafina entered. You look exhausted. This job is too much. Quit. We'll find another way. Serafina pulled a chair close to the bed and took her mother's hand. It was so small now, so fragile. I'm fine, Mom, really, the work is easy. You're lying, Elowen smiled softly. You always bite your lip when you lie. What's really happening? Serafina wanted to tell her everything. The mansion, the sleeping vampire, the poison offer, the awakening, the bond that now tied her to a creature who shouldn't exist. But her mother was dying. Her heart was giving out. The last thing she needed was more stress. Just tired, Serafina lied. How are you feeling? Like I'm dying. Elowen laughed, a papery sound. Don't look so stricken, honey. Death comes for everyone eventually. I've had a good life. I raised a daughter who would choose morality over money. That's worth more than another few years. Don't talk like that. Sarah, Elowen squeezed her hand with what little strength she had left. I need you to promise me something. When I'm gone, and I will be gone soon, surgery or no surgery, I need you to keep being the person I raised. Don't let desperation make you cruel. Don't let need make you compromise who you are. Can you promise me that? Serafina's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. I promise, Mom. Good girl. Elowen closed her eyes. Now go home. Get some sleep. You look like a ghost. Serafina kissed her mother's forehead and left. She made it to the hospital parking lot before her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Miss Vale. Mrs. Ravenscroft's voice was clipped. You need to return to the estate immediately. We have a situation. What kind of situation? The medical kind. Mr. Ashmore has collapsed. He's asking for you. Serafina ran. She found Lucian in his bedroom, slumped in a chair by the window. The curtains were still drawn, but cracks of sunlight leaked through, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Mrs. Foam. Ravenscroft stood guard by the door, her face carved from stone. He won't feed, the old woman said. I've brought him synthetic blood. He refuses, says it's not enough. Serafina knelt beside Lucian's chair. Up close, he looked worse than he had in the library. The veins beneath his eyes were dark purple, now spreading across his cheekbones like cracks in porcelain. His skin had taken on a grayish tint. Lucian, she said softly, you need to feed. No. His voice was barely a whisper. Why not? Because once I start, he opened his eyes with effort. If I feed from you, I won't be able to stop. The hunger will override everything. I'll drain you dry and hate myself for it afterward. What about the synthetic blood? It's like eating cardboard when you're starving. It keeps you alive, but it doesn't satisfy. It doesn't heal. Serafina looked at Mrs. Ravenscroft. Is there anyone else, other vampires who could? The bond complicates things, the old woman said. His body will reject blood from anyone but you now. It's one of the effects of the sanguine knot. You are his primary source, perhaps his only source. Serafina sat back on her heels. She thought about her mother in the hospital, about the promise she'd made, about choosing morality over desperation. But this wasn't murder. This was healing. Take what you need, she said. Lucian's eyes snapped to hers. No. Take it. She held out her wrist. I'm giving it willingly. That's important, right? Intent matters. I intend for you to survive. So take what you need. Serafina, please, and she met his gaze steadily. You said I saved you. Let me finish the job. Lucian reached out with a trembling hand. He wrapped his fingers around her wrist, his thumb finding her pulse point. Just a little, he whispered. I'll stop before it's too much. His fangs descended with a soft click. They were sharper than they looked, sliding into her wrist, with only the briefest flash of pain. Then there was only warmth. It spread from her wrist up her arm into her chest, pooling in her stomach like honey. It didn't hurt. It felt like sinking into a hot bath after a long day, like coming home. Serafina watched Lucian's face change as he drank. The gray tint faded from his skin. The cracks beneath his eyes smoothed out. Color returned to his cheeks. He pulled back after 30 seconds, his eyes wide with something like wonder. Your blood, he breathed. It tastes like lightning. Is that good? I've never tasted anything like it. It's not just nourishing, it's... He looked at her wrist, which was already healing, the puncture wounds sealing themselves. We need to have you tested. Mrs. Ravenscroft stepped forward. I'll make the arrangements. Miss Vale, you should rest. I'm fine, Serafina said, though she felt slightly dizzy. You've just fed a starving vampire, Mrs. Ravenscroft said dryly. You are not fine. You're going to sleep for 12 hours, mister. Ashmore's room has a guest chamber attached. Use it. Lucian stood moving, with his full strength restored. She's right. You need to rest. I'll have blood work done while you sleep. Something about your blood is unusual, and we need to know what. Serafina was too tired to argue. She let Mrs. Ravenscroft guide her to a room she hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a panel in Lucian's bedroom wall. It was smaller than the main chamber, but beautifully appointed, with a bed that looked like a cloud. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She woke to voices in the main chamber. The results came back from the lab. That was Mrs. Ravenscroft, her tone carefully neutral. Miss Vale has omega-negative blood. That's impossible, Lucian's voice. Omega-negative doesn't exist in humans. It's a myth. Apparently not. The geneticist confirmed it 3 times. 1 in 10 million occurrence rate, possibly rarer. It's a mutation that makes her blood universally compatible with all vampire houses. No rejection, no adverse reactions. The perfect donor. Silence. Then Lucian spoke again, his voice tight. If word gets out, she becomes the most valuable human on the planet, Mrs. Ravenscroft finished. Every vampire house will want her. Some will want to protect her, others will want to drain her, and some will want to breed her, see if the trait is hereditary. No one can know. Too late. A new voice, male, cultured, unfamiliar. The lab tech who processed her blood, he works for me now, and this information is already on its way to the Vampire Council. Serafina sat up in bed, her heart pounding. Through the crack in the door, she could see a figure standing in Lucian's room, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive suit. Draven. How did you get in here? Lucian's voice was deadly quiet. The wards don't keep out family, cousin. You know that. I used the same entrance I've been using for years while you slept. The council is very interested in Miss Vale. They've issued a summons. Both of you are to appear before them in 48 hours. For what purpose? To verify her blood type, to ensure she's being properly protected, to determine if she requires council oversight. Draven smiled. You see, Lucian, you may have woken up, but you're still weak, and the council knows it. They want to see if you're fit to rule, and they've devised a test. What test? The Crimson Trial. 48 hours locked in a chamber with her. No feeding, close quarters, her heartbeat, her scent, your hunger. If you attack her, you fail. If you survive, you prove you have the control necessary to lead. If you fail, I become regent, and Miss Vale becomes a council property to be distributed to whichever house can best utilize her unique gifts. Lucian moved faster than sight. One moment he was across the room, the next his hand was around Draven's throat, lifting him off the ground. You will not touch her. Draven gurgled, his face turning red, but he managed to smile. The trial begins in 2 days. Council orders. Refuse and you forfeit everything, including her. Lucian dropped him. Draven landed in a heap, coughing. Get out. Draven straightened his suit, his smile never wavering. 2 days, cousin. Then we'll see who the real master of House Ashmore is. He left. Seraphina stepped out of the guest room. Lucian turned to her, his expression stricken. You heard. I heard. She walked toward him. What's the Crimson Trial? An archaic test of will and strength. I'll be locked in a chamber with you for 48 hours. Close quarters. Your heartbeat, your scent, your blood. And I cannot feed. Not even a drop. If I attack you, I fail. If I survive, I prove I have the control necessary to lead. That's cruel. That's vampire politics. Lucian ran a hand through his hair. Draven's right about one thing. I'm not strong enough yet. My control is tenuous at best. Locked in a room with you for 2 days starving, I'll break. I'll hurt you, and then I'll lose everything. Then we prepare, Seraphina said. We figure out how to get you strong enough to survive this. There isn't time. Then we find another way. There's always another way. Lucian looked at her, and something in his expression softened. Why are you doing this? You could walk away. Take the money I'll give you for your mother's surgery and disappear. Let me face this alone. Because you need help, Seraphina said, and because someone once told me that desperate choices leave permanent scars. I'm choosing to help you. Not because I'm desperate, but because it's the right thing to do. She held out her hand. So, partners. Lucian stared at her hand for a long moment. Then he took it, his grip firm and cold. Partners. Over the next day, Lucian prepared Seraphina for what was coming. He taught her about vampire politics, about the 7 great houses and the council that governed them. He taught her about the old laws about blood bonds and trial by combat and the intricate web of alliances and betrayals that define their world. And Seraphina researched. She spent hours in Ashmore's library, pulling down ancient texts written in languages she had to translate with help from Mrs. Ravenscroft. She learned about vampire physiology, about the way their bodies worked, about the hungers that drove them. On the second night, she found it. The sanguine knot, she read aloud, her finger tracing the faded text. A rare bond formed when vampire blood and human blood mix with mutual intent to preserve life. Effects include emotional connection, shared vitality, and in rare cases, the ability to share strength through prolonged physical contact. She looked up at Lucian, who was pacing by the window. Shared strength. What if that's the loophole? What do you mean? The trial says you can't feed, but it doesn't say I can't help you endure. If we maintain physical contact, if the bond lets you draw strength from me without drinking my blood, you might survive. Lucian stopped pacing. That's never been tested. The lore mentions it as a possibility, but we don't have another option. Seraphina stood walking toward him. Unless you have a better idea. He didn't. The night before the trial, Elowin's condition took a turn for the worse. Seraphina sat by her mother's hospital bed, holding her hand as machine beeped their urgent warnings. Elowin's breathing was shallow and her heartbeat erratic. The surgery, the doctor said quietly. We can't wait any longer. It has to be tomorrow morning or she won't make it through the week. Tomorrow, Seraphina's stomach dropped. I can't, I have to, she stopped. She couldn't explain about the trial. Couldn't explain that a vampire's life hung in the balance alongside a strange bond that tied her to him. You have to what, honey? Elowin's eyes fluttered open. What's more important than this? Everything and nothing. Seraphina made a decision. Nothing, Mom. Nothing is more important than you. Schedule the surgery. She left the hospital and went straight to Ashmore Estate. She found Lucian in the library reviewing documents with Mrs. Ravenscroft. "I can't do the trial," she said without preamble. "My mother needs surgery tomorrow, the same time as your trial. I have to be there. I'm sorry." Lucian set down his papers. "Then I'll fail, and Draven will become regent, and the council will take you anyway for your blood." "I know, I'm sorry, It's your mother." Lucian's voice was soft. "Of course you choose her. That's who you are. That's why the bond formed in the first place." He walked to his desk and pulled out a checkbook. He wrote quickly, then handed Serafina a check. She looked at the amount and her vision blurred. $5 million. "What? For your mother's surgery, for her care afterward, for you to disappear and live the life you deserve far away from vampire politics and blood trials." "Lucian, I can't." "You can. You saved my life, Serafina. This is the least I can do." He smiled sad and genuine. "Go, be with your mother, and don't look back." Serafina stared at the check, at the impossible number, at the solution to every problem that had brought her to Ashmore Estate in the first place. She thought of her mother's voice. "Choose carefully." She tore the check in half. "What are you doing?" Lucian stared at her. "You're going to pay for the surgery," Serafina said. "But I'm not leaving. We're doing this trial together. My mother would never forgive me if I abandoned someone who needed help just because it was difficult. And neither would I." "Serafina, the surgery takes 6 hours. The trial is 48. If we start the trial after the surgery, I'll only miss the first 6 hours. You can manage 6 hours, right?" Lucian laughed, the sound rough with emotion. "You're insane." "Probably," she smiled. "But I'm your partner, and partners don't abandon each other." The next morning, Serafina sat in the surgical waiting room while doctors worked to save her mother's life. Her phone buzzed every 30 minutes with updates from Mrs. Ravenscroft. "Trial chamber prepared. Council members arriving. Mr. Ashmore is holding steady, refuses to begin without you." The council is growing impatient. Finally, after 6 hours that felt like 6 years, the surgeon emerged. "The surgery was successful. Your mother is stable. She'll need weeks of recovery, but she's going to live." Serafina's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Can I see her?" "She's sleeping. She'll sleep for hours. Come back tonight." Serafina ran from the hospital. She made it to Ashmore Estate just as the sun was setting. The trial chamber was in the basement, a room carved from solid stone with a single heavy door. Inside, it was empty except for 2 chairs and a timer on the wall counting down from 48 hours. Lucian stood in the center of the room, looking pale but determined. The council sat in the observation chairs behind a one-way mirror watching. "Miss Vale." The voice came from a speaker in the ceiling. Female. Ancient. "You're late. The trial begins now. You will remain in this chamber with Mr. Ashmore for 48 hours. You will not leave for any reason. He will not feed. If he attacks you, he fails. If he maintains control, he passes. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then let the Crimson trial begin." The door slammed shut with a sound like a judge's gavel. 48 hours. Just Serafina and a starving vampire in a locked room. This was going to be the longest 2 days of her life. The timer on the wall read 47 hours and 54 minutes. 6 minutes had passed since the door locked. It felt like 6 hours. Serafina sat in one of the 2 chairs trying to keep her breathing steady. Across from her, Lucian stood perfectly still, his back against the far wall, as far from her as the small chamber would allow. "You should sit," she said. "If I sit, I'll relax. If I relax, my control weakens." His voice was already strained. "I need to stay alert. For 48 hours. For as long as it takes." The chamber was cold. No windows, no decoration, just stone walls, stone floor, stone ceiling. The only features were the 2 chairs, the timer, and the one-way mirror where the council watched like vultures waiting for death. Serafina could feel their eyes on her, judging, waiting for her to become prey. "Talk to me," she said. "Tell me about the curse, the real story." While Lucian's jaw tightened. "Why, because we have 48 hours to fill, and I'd rather understand who you are than sit in silence while you suffer." He laughed bitter and sharp. "You want to know who I am? I'm a fool who fell in love with a human woman 60 years ago, who broke the first law by turning her without council permission, who watched her go mad from the bloodlust because the transformation was flawed, who held her while she begged me to end her suffering." His eyes closed. "I'm the king who was too weak to save the woman he loved, so I gave her the mercy she asked for. and the council punished me for it. Not execution. That would have been too kind. They cursed me to eternal sleep, trapped in my own body, aware of everything, but unable to move or speak or scream. That's torture, Serafina whispered. That's justice. Vampire justice. He opened his eyes. They were already starting to shift, the gold brightening, the pupils elongating. I listened to Draven plot my death. I felt my body deteriorate. I wondered if I would ever wake up, or if this was my eternity. And then you refused to kill me. You, a girl with every reason to take the money and run. You chose mercy over survival. It wasn't mercy, Serafina said. It was basic decency. In my world, those are the same thing. The timer ticked down. 47 hours, 42 minutes. Lucian's hands were shaking now. Small tremors he couldn't quite hide. Tell me about your mother, he said abruptly. The surgery, was it successful? Yes, she's stable, sleeping. She'll recover. Serafina smiled despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Thanks to you, the hospital called me the most generous benefactor they'd ever had. $5 million covers a lot more than one surgery. Good, she deserves the best care. You don't even know her. I know you. Lucian's gaze was intense, burning. And anyone who raised you to be this brave, this stubborn, this relentlessly good, deserves everything I can give. The temperature in the room seemed to rise. Or maybe it was just Serafina's face flushing. Tell me about the bondon, she said, changing the subject. You said you can feel my emotions. What does that mean exactly? It means right now I know you're afraid. Your pulse is racing. I can hear it like thunder in my ears. I can smell the adrenaline in your sweat. But underneath the fear, there's determination. Stubbornness. You've decided you're going to help me survive this, and nothing will change your mind. He pushed off from the wall, taking one step toward her. Just one. It means I know you're attracted to me even though you're terrified. Your heart speeds up when I look at you. Your breathing changes when I speak. The bond doesn't lie, Serafina. It strips away all pretense. Serafina's cheeks burned. That's invasive. It goes both ways. Another step. You can feel me too if you focus. The hunger gnawing at my control. The way every cell in my body is screaming at me to close the distance between us. To taste you again. To drink until the hunger finally stops. He stopped walking, gripped the back of the second chair so hard the wood splintered. This is why you should have stayed away. Why you should have taken the money and run. Because I don't know if I'm strong enough to resist. Not for 48 hours. Not when you smell like everything I've been denied. Serafina stood, walked toward him deliberately. What are you doing? His voice cracked. Testing the theory. She held out her hand. The bond lets us share strength through physical contact. We won't know if it works unless we try. Don't, she took his hand. The effect was instantaneous. Warmth flooded through the connection flowing from her to him and back again. Serafina gasped as she felt it, his hunger, yes, but also his iron will. His determination to protect her, even from himself. His fear that he would fail and hurt her. And underneath it all, something else. Something that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Hope. It's working, Lucian breathed. The tremors in his hands stopped. The gold in his eyes dimmed slightly. I can feel your strength, your life force. It's like drinking sunlight. Does it help? Yes, but Serafina, I can't hold your hand for 48 hours. Why not? Because eventually you'll need to sleep, to eat, to use the facilities. He gestured to a small door in the corner that led to a basic bathroom. And the moment we break contact, the hunger will return worse than before. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. She squeezed his hand. 1 hour at a time. Can you manage that? He looked at their joined hands, at the way her small fingers intertwined with his longer ones, at the point where her warm, living skin met his cold, dead flesh. I can try. They sat in the chairs, hands clasped between them. The timer counted down. 46 hours, 43 hours, 40 hours. They talked. Serafina told him about growing up poor but loved, about her father who had died when she was 16, about medical school and the dreams she'd had to abandon, about working 3 jobs and still drowning in debt. Lucian told her about being born in 1624, about watching the world change across 4 centuries, about the loneliness of immortality, how everyone you loved turned to dust while you remained, about the weight of ruling, of making decisions that affected thousands of lives. At the 36-hour mark, Serafina's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with her free hand. A text from the hospital. Your mother is awake, asking for you. Serafina's throat tightened. I need to call her. Just for a minute. She'll worry if I don't. Lucian nodded. She dialed one-handed. Elowen answered on the second ring, her voice weak but clear. Sarah, baby, where are you? I'm working, Mom. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, but alive. The doctors say the surgery was perfect. They say someone paid for everything, including a private room and a full-time nurse. Sarah, what did you do? I made a friend. Serafina looked at Lucian. He wanted to help. This friend, is he why you sound scared? Mothers, they always knew. I'm fine, Mom, just tired. I'll come see you as soon as I can, okay? You be careful, baby, and remember what I taught you. Choose carefully. I will. I love you. Love you too. Serafina hung up. She realized tears were sliding down her cheeks. She sounds strong, Lucian said softly. She is, stronger than me. I doubt that. He reached up with his free hand and wiped the tears from her face with surprising gentleness. You're locked in a room with a starving vampire, giving me your strength hour by hour, risking your life to save mine. I'd say that makes you the strongest person I've ever met. Their eyes locked. The air between them felt charged heavy with something unspoken. The timer hit 24 hours. Halfway. I need to sleep, Serafina admitted. Her eyelids were drooping. She'd been awake for over 30 hours straight. But I don't want to let go. Sleep. Lucian shifted his chair closer until their knees touched. I'll hold your hand. I won't let go unless absolutely necessary. Promise? I promise. Serafina leaned her head against his shoulder. It was cold and hard, nothing like a human's warmth, but it felt safe. She slept. She woke to screaming, her own screaming. Pain lanced through her wrist, white-hot and terrible. She jerked upright, disoriented, and saw Lucian across the room, pressed against the far wall, his eyes blazing gold, and his fangs fully extended. Blood dripped from her wrist, 2 neat puncture wounds. I'm sorry. His voice was barely human. More growl than words. I fell asleep. I didn't mean the hunger took over. I stopped as soon as I realized. It's okay. Serafina pressed her sleeve against the wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. You stopped. That's what matters. I could have killed you, but you didn't. The timer read 8 hours remaining. 8 hours. They were so close. We can't maintain contact anymore, Lucian said. His whole body was rigid, every muscle locked in the effort of staying away from her. I can't trust myself. The hunger is too strong. Then we find another way. The lights went out. Complete darkness descended. Then emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the chamber in blood-red light. An alarm blared. 3 sharp tones, then silence. The voice came through the speaker, but it wasn't the council member from before. It was younger, male, familiar. Attention, Miss Vale. Draven's voice dripped with false concern. There's been an incident. Your mother has taken a turn for the worse. The hospital is requesting your immediate presence. Serafina's blood ran cold. What? It seems there was a complication with her medication. Unfortunate. I'm opening the chamber door now. You're free to leave. Save your mother. All you have to do is walk away. The heavy door clicked open, swung wide. Beyond it, darkness and freedom. It's a trap, Lucian said. He's lying about your mother. You don't know that? I know Draven. This is exactly his play. Isolate you, use your weakness against you. The moment you step through that door, his men will take you. Serafina's phone buzzed, a video call from an unknown number. She answered. The screen showed a warehouse, dark, cold, industrial. In the center, illuminated by a harsh spotlight, sat a wheelchair. In it, hooked up to an IV and portable monitors, was Elowen. Mom. Serafina's hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Elowen's eyes were closed. She wasn't moving. Draven stepped into frame. He smiled at the camera. Hello, Miss Vale. As you can see, I wasn't lying. Your mother is very much here, very much alive. For now. He reached out and touched the IV line. Isn't modern medicine wonderful? This little bag contains her heart medication. Without it, she has maybe an hour. With it, she could live another 20 years. He pulled the IV line free, let it dangle. Here's the deal. You bring me Lucian, weak, starving, barely able to stand. You deliver him to Pier 19 within the hour, and I give you back your mother. You stay in that chamber and let the trial continue, and I drop this medication bag in the trash. Your choice. The video cut off. Serafina stared at the blank screen, at the open door, at Lucian across the room. Go, he said quietly. Save her. I'll forfeit the trial. Your mother is more important. If you forfeit, Draven becomes regent. The council takes me. We both lose. At least you'll be alive. Your mother will be alive. That's all that matters. Serafina looked at the timer. 7 hours, 42 minutes. Then she looked at Lucian. Really looked at him. At the way he was holding himself together through sheer force of will. At the love and sacrifice in his eyes, even now, even starving and desperate. She thought about her mother's voice. Choose carefully. I'm going, she said, but not to forfeit. I'm going to save my mother and come back. Both things. We're finishing this trial. Serafina, trust me. She walked to the door, paused. 7 hours. Hold on for 7 more hours. Can you do that? I don't know. Try, because I'm coming back. She ran. Pier 19 was exactly as the video had shown. A massive warehouse on the waterfront, the kind of place where illegal things happened in the dark. Serafina approached on foot. Her phone in one hand, the other clenched into a fist. The warehouse door was open. Inviting. She stepped inside. The space was cavernous and cold, smelling of salt water and rust. Her footsteps echoed on concrete. Mom. Her voice bounced off metal walls. Lights blazed to life. Temporary floods that blinded her for a moment. When her vision cleared, she saw the wheelchair. Eliawen was there, slumped forward, the monitors beeping weakly. But she wasn't alone. Draven stood beside her, flanked by 4 men in tactical gear. They held weapons that looked wrong, bulky rifles with thick cables running to battery packs on their belts. UV weapons, concentrated synthetic sunlight, deadly to vampires. Miss Vale, Draven smiled. So predictable. I knew you'd come running. Love makes people stupid. Let her go. I'm here. That was the deal. The deal was you bring me Lucian. I don't see him. He's weakened, starving. You don't need me to deliver him. You can take him yourself after the trial ends. But I'm impatient, and I need to make sure he fails that trial, which means keeping you away for the next 7 hours. Draven nodded to his men. Secure her. The mercenaries moved forward. Serafina ran, not toward the door, toward her mother. She made it 3 steps before hands grabbed her. Rough, professional. They forced her to her knees, wrenching her arms behind her back. Let me go. You know I almost admire you, Draven said, walking over. Choosing poverty over murder. Staying loyal to a vampire who can barely stand. It's noble. Stupid, but noble. He crouched down to her level. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to keep you here until the trial timer runs out. Lucian will fail. I'll be declared regent. The council will hand you over to me. And your mother, he glanced at Eliawen. Well, accidents happen in warehouses. You're a coward, Serafina spat, using innocent people to get what you want. I'm a pragmatist. There's a difference. A sound echoed through the warehouse, low, deep, a growl that made the metal walls vibrate. Draven's smile faltered. The emergency lights exploded. Glass rained down. Darkness descended, broken only by the spotlight on Eliawen's wheelchair. He's here, one of the mercenaries whispered, his voice tight with fear. Impossible, Draven said. He's locked in the trial chamber. The wards failed the moment you broke your word. Lucian's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. You promised her safety. You lied. The trial is void. He appeared in the spotlight, not walking, not running, simply there as if reality had shifted to accommodate him. He looked terrible. His skin was gray, the veins beneath standing out like black spiderwebs. His eyes were pure gold now, no white left burning with an inhuman light. He looked like death given form. UV weapons, Draven ordered. Light him up. The mercenaries fired. 4 beams of concentrated ultraviolet light converged on Lucian. They hit him with the force of physical blows, driving him backward. His skin began to smoke, immediately blistering and charring. He screamed, a sound of pure agony. No! Serafina fought against the hands holding her. Stop, you're killing him. That's the idea, sweetheart. Draven watched with satisfaction as Lucian fell to his knees, his flesh burning. But Lucian didn't fall completely. Even burning, even screaming, he fought. He clawed at the concrete, pulling himself forward, inch by agonizing inch, towards Serafina. The mercenaries adjusted their aim, crossing the beams over his back, pinning him to the floor. Serafina couldn't watch, couldn't bear it. This man who had shown her such gentleness, such vulnerability, was being tortured because he tried to save her. She stopped struggling, went limp in the mercenary's grip. The man's hold loosened fractionally. It was enough. Serafina drove her elbow back into his solar plexus, felt him gasp release her. She grabbed the knife from his belt, standard military issue, and spun. One of the other mercenaries swung his UV weapon toward her. She threw the knife. It wasn't a great throw. She'd never been trained for combat, but desperation made up for lack of skill. The blade caught the man in the shoulder. He jerked his finger, clenching on the trigger. The UV beam swept wild, hitting one of the other mercenaries instead of her. The friendly fire victim went down screaming. Chaos erupted. Serafina ran, not away, toward Lucian. She threw herself over him, shielding his burned body with hers. The UV light hammered against her back. It felt like being pressed against a hot stove. Her skin blistered instantly. But she wasn't a vampire. The light hurt her, but it wouldn't kill her. "Move," Lucian rasped beneath her. "Serafina, move." No. She pulled the broken knife from her pocket. She'd picked up a shard earlier. Held it to her palm. "What are you doing?" "Saving you." She sliced deep. Blood welled up hot and red and human. She pressed her bleeding palm to Lucian's mouth. "Drink." "No, the frenzy, I'll kill you." "I don't care." She grabbed his hair, forced him to look at her. Tears streamed down her face. "If you don't fight, we all die. My mother, me, you. Do it. Save us." The scent of her blood hit him. She saw the moment his resistance shattered, saw the moment the hunger overrode everything else. His eyes went completely red, crimson, like blood in water. He didn't bite her. He inhaled the essence of her life force, drawing it in through the wound on her palm. The reaction was cataclysmic. A shockwave of energy exploded outward from their joined bodies. The concrete floor cracked beneath them. The UV lights didn't just flicker, they exploded, showering the mercenaries in sparks and molten glass. The warehouse plunged into darkness. For 3 heartbeats, there was only silence. Then from the darkness, 2 eyes opened, glowing crimson, brilliant as dying stars. Lucian rose. He didn't look weakened anymore. He looked transcendent, terrible, beautiful. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air shimmer. "You broke the old laws, Draven." His voice was no longer human. It was the voice of something ancient and wrathful. "You touched what is mine. You threatened her family. You burned me with artificial light." He moved. The mercenaries didn't even have time to scream. One moment they were standing, weapons raised. The next, they were down unconscious, broken. Not dead. Lucian's control was absolute even in the frenzy. He disabled them without killing. Draven backed away, his confidence evaporating. "Lucian, wait, we can make a deal." "No more deals." Lucian was in front of him, hand around his throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. "You will be tried by the council. You will be sentenced, and you will spend the rest of your very long life regretting the moment you thought you could threaten her." He threw Draven across the warehouse. The man hit a support pillar and crumpled. Then Lucian turned to Serafina, and the red faded from his eyes. They were gold again. Concerned. Gentle. "Are you hurt?" She was trembling, bleeding, burned, exhausted. "My mother," she whispered. They went to the wheelchair together. Elowyn was unconscious but breathing. Her monitors showed a steady heartbeat. "She's alive," Lucian said, checking her vitals with the efficiency of someone who'd seen centuries of medical evolution. Sedated but unharmed. Draven needed her alive as leverage. The warehouse doors burst open. Mrs. Ravenscroft strode in, flanked by a dozen people in formal black attire. Behind them, 7 figures in ceremonial robes. The Vampire Council. "Mr. Ashmore?" The lead council member, a woman who appeared 40 but moved with ancient grace, surveyed the scene. "The trial was invalidated when Draven broke the terms," Lucian said coldly. "He abducted Miss Vale's mother. He attempted to murder me with UV weapons. He violated every law we hold sacred." The council member looked at Draven's unconscious form, at the disabled mercenaries, at Serafina bleeding and burned but standing. "We witnessed everything," she said. "The trial chamber had remote viewing. We saw Miss Vale's sacrifice. We saw her refuse to abandon you despite the threat to her family. And we saw Draven's treachery." She turned to Serafina. "You have proven yourself worthy of the bond, and you have proven Lucian Ashmore fit to rule. The trial is complete. He passes." Relief flooded Serafina's body. Her knees buckled. Lucian caught her before she fell. "I've got you," he murmured. "Always." But the council member wasn't done. "However, there remains the matter of your blood, Omega negative, the rarest type in existence." A new voice spoke from the shadows behind the council. "Indeed, Such a fascinating anomaly. A woman stepped into the light. She was beautiful in the way ancient things are beautiful, timeless, and terrible. Her hair was silver white, her eyes black as obsidian. She wore robes that seemed to be made of shadow itself. Lady Isolde, Lucian breathed. His grip on Seraphina tightened protectively. Hello, Lucian. It's been 40 years. You're looking well, surprisingly well, considering you should still be sleeping. Lady Isolde walked closer, her gaze fixed on Seraphina. I cast the curse that kept you asleep. I convinced the council it was mercy rather than execution. I've spent 4 decades ensuring you stayed that way. She smiled. And then this little human stumbled into my carefully laid plans and ruined everything. You, Seraphina said, you orchestrated all of this. We're guilty. I loved Lucian once. He rejected me, so I arranged for his human lover to go mad. I framed him for illegal turning. I suggested the sleeping curse, and I've spent 40 years preparing for this moment. What moment? The moment when an Omega negative human would form a blood bond with him. You see, Omega blood has unique properties. When bonded to a vampire as powerful as Lucian, it creates a conduit, a direct line to his life force. She raised her hand. Shadows coiled around her fingers like living things. Kill her, and I kill him. Drain her, and I drain him. Possess her blood, and I possess the key to becoming the most powerful vampire in history. You won't touch her, Lucian snarled. I don't need to touch her. I just need her to bleed. Lady Isolde gestured. The shadows lashed out like whips, striking the wounds on Seraphina's palm and back. The burns tore open. Blood flowed. The shadows drank it in, growing darker, more substantial. Lucian lunged. For you to wake. I ensured the trial would for you to wake. I ensured the trial would push you to extremis. I needed you desperate enough to complete the blood bond fully. And now that you have, I can finally take what's mine. The shadows pulled tighter. Lucian gasped, the sound agonized. Seraphina felt it through the bond. Felt his pain as if it were her own. Felt the shadows draining him through her blood. Stop, she begged. Please, you're killing him. That's the idea, dear. Once he's dead, the bond transfers to me. And with Omega blood and his accumulated power, I'll be unstoppable. Seraphina's vision blurred. She was losing too much blood, too fast. She could feel herself fading. But through the bond, she felt something else. Lucian's voice, not spoken, felt. Trust yourself. Your blood chose me. It can choose again. Choose, that's what her mother always said. Choose carefully. Seraphina had chosen to save Lucian, had chosen sacrifice over safety, had chosen love over fear. But choice was power. Intent shaped magic. No, Seraphina said. The shadows paused. What? No. Seraphina pulled herself to her feet through sheer will. My blood is mine. My choice is mine. And I don't choose you. She focused on the bond, on the connection between her and Lucian, on the warmth of it, the rightness of it. I choose him. Only him. Always him. The shadows recoiled as if burned. They tried to tighten to force her compliance, but they couldn't. Intent mattered. Free will mattered, and Seraphina had made her choice. The shadows released Lucian. He dropped to the ground, gasping. Impossible, Isolde hissed. You're human. You can't resist. I'm not just human. Seraphina looked at her blood still flowing, still glowing faintly within her light. I'm bonded, and the bond goes both ways. She reached for Lucian, took his hand. The moment they touched, power surged, not draining, amplifying. Lucian rose, his eyes blazing gold and crimson together. He looked at Lady Isolde and smiled. You were wrong about one thing, he said. The curse was never about love. It was about control. You wanted to possess me, but possession isn't love. He looked at Seraphina. Love is freely given. It's choosing someone even when it costs everything. It's sacrifice without resentment. It's trust without reservation. He turned back to Isolde. She taught me that, and she's right. You can't take what's freely given. You can only accept or reject it. Then I'll reject you both. Isolde's hands crackled with dark energy. If I can't have you, no one will, she struck. The shadows came like a tsunami, a wave of darkness meant to consume them both. But Seraphina didn't run. She stepped forward, placed herself between the darkness and Lucian. You're wrong about something too, she said quietly. You think love is about having, possessing, controlling, but it's not. She thought of her mother, of the way Elowen had smiled through pain so Sarah wouldn't worry, of the way she'd raised her daughter to choose morality over desperation. Love is about seeing someone in pain and choosing to comfort them. Not because you'll get something in return, but because their suffering hurts you too. The shadows hit her, wrapped around her, tried to consume her, but they couldn't, because Seraphina's blood, Omega blood, freely given in love, repelled darkness. It was too pure, too bright. The shadows dissolved like mist in sunlight. Isolde screamed in frustration and fury. She lunged for Seraphina, hands outstretched, nails like claws. Lucian was faster. He caught Isolde's wrists, held her as she struggled. 800 years, he said softly. 800 years you've been alone because you couldn't understand the difference between obsession and love. I pity you, Isolde. I truly do. He looked at the council. What is the sentence for attempting to murder a council member and his bonded companion? The lead council member stepped forward. Exile, stripping of power, imprisonment in the deep tombs. No, Isolde thrashed. You can't. I'm an elder. You were an elder, the council member corrected, but you broke the oldest law. You harmed the innocent to serve your own ends. The sentence is final. Two council guards came forward. They bound Isolde in chains that glowed with pale blue light, magic nullifiers. As they dragged her away, she looked back at Seraphina. You'll regret this, she hissed. Bonding to him will cost you everything. Your humanity, your mortality, your freedom. You've chosen a cage. Seraphina looked at Lucian, at the way he was looking at her, like she was the sun after 40 years of darkness. No, she said, I've chosen hope. Isolde's screams faded as she was dragged into the depths of whatever vampire prison awaited her. The lead council member turned to Draven, who was just regaining consciousness. Draven Ashmore, you have conspired with a traitor, attempted regicide, endangered innocent humans. The council strips you of title, wealth, and standing. You are exiled from all vampire territories. If you are found within our jurisdiction, again, the sentence is death. Draven's face went white. You can't, I'm family. You ceased to be family when you chose betrayal. Lucian's voice was cold. Take him away. The guards hauled Draven to his feet. As they led him past Seraphina, he spat at her feet. This isn't over, he snarled. Yes, Seraphina said quietly. It is. She watched him go, watched the man who had tried to make her a murderer, who had threatened her mother, who had tortured Lucian. She watched him lose everything, and she felt no satisfaction, just relief that it was over. The council member approached Seraphina. You have passed tests most vampires could not endure. You have proven yourself worthy of the bond. The council formally recognizes your union with Lucian Ashmore. You are under our protection. Thank you. However, the woman's eyes glittered. Omega negative blood remains an anomaly. We will require periodic monitoring to ensure your safety. You mean to ensure I don't become a weapon? A slight smile. That too, but know this, child. You have changed the future of our world. A human bonded to a vampire king. It hasn't happened in 5 centuries. You've opened a door we thought was closed forever. She turned to leave, then paused. Use that power wisely, both of you. The council departed. Mrs. Ravenscroft began directing the cleanup, her voice crisp and efficient as always. Seraphina sagged against Lucian. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. My mother is being transported to the best private facility in the state, Mrs. Ravenscroft said without looking up from her phone. Full-time care, complete recovery suite, Mr. Ashmore's orders. Thank you, Seraphina whispered. Lucian scooped Seraphina into his arms as if she weighed nothing. You need medical attention. Rest. Food. Probably a month of sleep. So do you. We're both disasters, Lucian said. A smile tugged at his lips. Perfectly matched disasters. 3 months later, the Ashmore estate had been transformed. The gothic gloom remained, that was part of its charm, but now light flooded through open curtains. Gardens had been trimmed and replanted. The staff had been expanded to include humans and vampires working side by side. And in the grand ballroom room, 500 guests gathered for the winter gala. Seraphina stood at the top of the grand staircase looking down at the sea of faces below. Vampires in formal attire, humans in evening gowns. All of them staring up at her with curiosity, respect, and in some cases envy. She wore a gown of deep crimson silk that Mrs. Ravenscroft had commissioned. Diamonds glittered at her throat, a gift from Lucian. But her favorite piece of jewelry was the simple silver bracelet on her wrist, engraved with 2 words. Choose carefully. A gift from her mother. Elowen sat in the front row of the ballroom, healthy and glowing. The surgery had been a complete success. She'd spent the past 3 months in recovery, growing stronger every day. She'd taken the news about vampires surprisingly well. Beside Serafina, Lucian adjusted his midnight blue tuxedo. He looked every inch the Vampire King. Powerful, confident, devastatingly handsome. Ready? He asked. No, absolutely terrified. Good. Terror means you're paying attention. He offered his arm. Shall we? They descended the stairs together. The crowd parted. Music swelled, a waltz traditional and elegant. As they reached the dance floor, Lucian pulled Serafina close. They're all staring, she murmured. Let them stare. Let them see the woman who brought a dead king back to life. The woman who faced down Lady Isolde and won. The woman who chose compassion over cruelty even when it would have been easier to walk away. You make me sound like a hero. You are. They began to dance. Serafina had practiced for weeks, but she still stepped on his feet twice. Lucian didn't seem to mind. Midway through the second song, he stopped dancing. I have something to say. Publicly. Before Serafina could ask what he meant, Lucian raised his hand. The music stopped. Every eye in the ballroom turned to them. 3 months ago, Lucian said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast room, I woke from cursed sleep. I woke weak, starving, surrounded by enemies who wanted me dead. He looked at Serafina. And I woke to find a girl who had been offered a fortune to kill me, who had every reason to take that money and run, who chose instead to save my life at risk to her own. He released her hand, stepped back, and dropped to one knee. The ballroom erupted in gasps. Serafina's heart stopped. Serafina Vale, Lucian said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. You woke me from death. You fed me when I was starving. You stood between me and fire. You chose me when you had every reason not to. He opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike anything Serafina had ever seen. A massive diamond set in twisted bands of white gold and rubies designed to look like flowing blood and beating hearts intertwined. I don't want to rule this world alone, Lucian continued. I don't want immortality without you beside me. I want my equal, my partner, my wife. His golden eyes met hers. Will you marry me? Serafina looked at the ring, at the man kneeling before her, at her mother in the crowd, tears streaming down her face, nodding encouragement. She thought about the girl she'd been 3 months ago, desperate, drowning, scrubbing blood from floors for minimum wage. She thought about the woman she'd become, bonded to a vampire king, recognized by the council, strong enough to face down ancient evils. She smiled. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper, but Lucian heard it. Of course he did. He could hear her heartbeat from across a room. He stood, slipped the ring onto her finger, kissed her in front of 500 witnesses. The ballroom erupted in applause. When they pulled apart, Lucian was grinning like a man who'd just won the lottery. That's it then. You're stuck with me for eternity. I can think of worse fates. Liar, I'm a nightmare. You're my nightmare. Serafina touched his face. And I choose you, always. The celebration continued. Serafina danced with her mother, with Mrs. Ravenscroft, with council members who wanted to see the woman who'd changed everything. Near midnight, a servant approached Lucian with a sealed envelope on a silver tray. The paper was ancient, the wax seal bearing a symbol Lucian hadn't seen in decades. He opened it, his expression darkening as he read. Serafina noticed immediately. What is it? Lucian looked at her, then at the celebrating crowd, then back at the letter. A warning. From Isolde, sent before her imprisonment. He read aloud, his voice low so only Serafina could hear. Dear nephew, you think you've won. You've defeated Draven, imprisoned me, claimed your throne, married your little human. Congratulations, but you were always a pawn in a larger game. The curse was never about love, it was about timing. I needed you asleep for 40 years. I needed you to wake weakened. I needed you to bond with an omega-negative human, because I needed you distracted. While you were playing house with your bride, I've been preparing. The first vampire, my creator, our ancestor, the original monster, has been imprisoned for 1,000 years beneath your very estate, and the only thing keeping him locked away was my magic. Now that I'm in the deep tombs, that magic is failing. He will wake within the month, and when he does, he will be angry, he will be hungry, and he will be unstoppable. You have 3 weeks to prepare, 3 weeks to gather allies, 3 weeks to say goodbye to your little human, because when he wakes, mortals are the first thing he feeds on. I would have ruled beside him. You will burn beneath him. Sleep well, nephew. The game is just beginning, Isolde. The music continued. The guests laughed and danced unaware. Serafina looked at Lucy. And, do you believe her? I don't know, but I know this. He took her hand, the one wearing his ring. Whatever comes next, we face it together. As equals. As partners. As husband and wife, Serafina added. As husband and wife, Lucian agreed. They stood there in the middle of the celebration, holding each other, knowing that the storm was coming. But for tonight, they had this. They had light. They had music. They had love. And sometimes that was enough. The end. Serafina and Lucian's story continues in the Crimson Awakening rise of the first vampire. If you loved watching Serafina transform from an overlooked maid to vampire queen, subscribe now. Because what's coming next will change everything. The first vampire is waking, and he's been hungry for a very, very long time. The real battle is just beginning. Sonnet 4.5 Extended Claude 1.